Hello everyone. I want to talk about a very interesting opportunity, and that opportunity is in uranium. Now, I did a vlog last month about the price of silver, and as predicted, the price went up after I made the prediction, and it is coming down a bit to test support levels, and as I predicted, it is holding strong. The support level is holding strong, and now I see a similar situation in uranium. Now, I noticed that the price of uranium has gone down substantially since 2011 after what happened in the Fukushima disaster, and the price of uranium per pound was around $70 and now it's only at $30. So it really came down, and if you look at investment opportunities, I just see a nice base forming here in the equities markets in relation to uranium, and I just see an opportunity here. Now, I want to talk about the market itself. Uranium is a very controversial metal because it's used in nuclear technology, and that is for energy and to make weapons. So it is very controversial. There are people that are saying that it shouldn't be used, it's too dangerous. And then, of course, people are saying we can't live without it because it's so efficient and very cheap that it powers many countries. I mean, most of the power that many countries get predominantly is from nuclear energy. I mean, just look at France. 75% of its electricity comes from nuclear power. I mean, what would they do without it? So you have to understand those things. Now, as far as the moral arguments, I am reading about that it's not just the disasters that have happened in Chernobyl and Fukushima, it's also the radiation that's caused a lot of damage, and people are saying that it's going into the water, it's getting into the food chain, and there's radioactivity in food, and if people eat it, they can get really sick. And people are eating the food, they're getting sick, people are being affected by the radiation of nuclear waste. So nuclear energy certainly isn't a clean energy because they have to put that waste somewhere. So, I mean, I think there are merits to these arguments, and it should be looked into. I mean, it's something very serious. People are blaming infant mortality rates on radiation that's as a result of disasters such as Chernobyl and Fukushima, and they're blaming radiation from nuclear wastes, which are causing illnesses in people. So this is something to look at. This is definitely something to look into. However, I want to make a moral argument, if I may, about nuclear energy. That's one side of it. But you also have to look at the lives that are benefiting from it. I mean, people can count the fatalities that were caused by nuclear energy, but what about the lives that are being benefited and the lives that are being saved? You can't count the lives that are being saved. I mean, for example, a country like France, 75% of its energy comes from nuclear power. How many hospitals do they have there? How many times do people need nuclear energy, to save their lives, to call for help if they need it? I mean, everything is power. Using phones to call someone, they need to be charged, and your lights are on. You have refrigeration to keep, your food fresh. I mean, electricity is paramount to an industrial society. And if you don't have an alternative, what else could you do? You look at hospitals, they have life support systems that are being powered by the grid. And that grid is being fed with nuclear energy. So you have to look at the lives that are being saved. And, if there's an alternative energy, sure, that's great. But the question is there really alternative energy? And now what I'm noticing is, like I said, there's something to look at when there are claims that nuclear energy is causing sickness and have caused fatalities as a result of its being used. But, and some, but not all, some at the same time, in the same breath, are saying we need more green energy. So what's their agenda? Green energy is inefficient. I mean, they don't know what they're talking about. When they talk about green energy, you know that there's an agenda. Because the problem with green energy is it's just very expensive and very inefficient. I mean, you live in a big city. Where are you going to put solar panels? You know, you have a big office building or a big apartment building, where are you going to put solar panels in a big city? And let's say you have a house. I heard it costs around $40,000 to install a solar energy system in your house. Who has that kind of money? And then even after you do that, I heard you only get about 60% efficiency. And what else is there? Then there's wind, right? Where are you going to put a big windmill in your house? Where are you going to do that? I mean, if you don't live near an area where they use windmills to generate power, you know, where are you going to do it? And it's very expensive. To install windmills, it's expensive. It takes up a lot of space. You need a lot of acreage. You know, you look at countries like Japan, they just don't have the room. Japan, the real estate there is so expensive. Just go there, you know, just to stay in a hotel, see what it costs you. So, I mean, where are they going to put these things? Where are they going to put solar farms and windmill farms in Japan? And the real estate is so expensive. See, nuclear power, it's tiny in relation. I mean, it's just a small area where they put the plant and they generate power. So it's extremely cheap in relation to other energy sources, and it's very efficient. I mean, if you look at the ratio of cost to efficiency, I would say it's probably the highest with nuclear energy. If you look at all the energy sources like natural gas and coal-fired plants and then green energy. So that's the problem. Look, I like green energy. I mean, you know, solar technology has been great, you know, for calculators. I had a solar-powered calculator. I mean, that was pretty efficient. But when it comes to powering your house and adding to a major grid to get power, it's very inefficient. And, you know, the government is subsidizing it. Then you know it's inefficient. When they're subsidizing solar companies and then they go out of business and all our taxpayer money is wasted, you know, that's a moral argument against it. Maybe solar energy in the future will be more efficient and it'll be more cost effective. The price will come down. I mean, for example, I remember when the first cell phones were coming out. And I actually had one of the first cell phones. I mean, it was this big bulky thing, and the battery was very inefficient. It had to be charged very frequently. It was going dead. I mean, the connectivity was terrible. It was roaming. A lot of the time I was getting cut off, and it was so expensive. It was like 50 cents a minute. And this wasn't even the first cell phone that came out. This is a little bit later. But it just wasn't there. The technology wasn't there. It takes time. And now, you know, look what we have. We have a cell phone industry that's amazing. Homeless people in China have cell phones. So maybe in the future, solar technology will be more efficient and the price will come down. But it's just not there yet. And since it's not there yet, there is no replacement for nuclear energy. The United States, look how much energy we use in this country. I mean, an enormous amount. We use more energy than any other country in the world, okay? Despite our population in relation to the energy use is so lopsided compared to other countries, and 20% of our power is generated from nuclear energy. So, you know, how can that be replaced? So you have to look at that. If you think it's dangerous and not safe, you need an alternative. Because if you don't have an alternative, it's also not safe to not have the power that you need because of the things that I mentioned. So it's a controversial topic, and everything has to be looked at. Now, okay, now that we established that nuclear energy is a necessity, how do we make money here? This is about investment. Now, uranium, unlike other precious metals, it's not something that you can buy and store it physically like silver and gold. I mean, obviously not. So there's limited ways that you can invest in nuclear energy. And the one way that I see is in the equities markets. So the investment vehicles are limited. And the other thing to look at is also that a lot of these companies are more thinly traded. You don't see a lot of volume, a lot of open interest in these companies because they're smaller. It's just a very small market compared to the other metals that I mentioned. And while I'm talking about the metal, what's really interesting about uranium, it ties into what I was talking about when I talked about silver. There's no substitute for it, which means there's no other metal that they can use to use in a reactor. There's no other metal that can be used in a reactor besides uranium. And just like silver, like gold, it has to be mined. So why did uranium go down so much? Well, I mentioned Fukushima. After that disaster, Japan shut down the nuclear reactors. However, since then, it's already 2014, and they're planning on starting up. Why? They simply cannot afford to continue to import highly expensive fossil fuels to power their country. And Japan lacks natural resources. They have to import most of what they're using. So it's very expensive, and if your electric bills are skyrocketing and you can't pay them, they're going to turn the lights off. So, people are really upset and they're scared of nuclear energy. But as the years go by, they're thinking about their current needs, and they need power. And they cannot continue to import most of their power from other countries. It's just way too expensive. So they're going to start up their nuclear reactors. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And when they do, Japan is a huge consumer of nuclear energy. They have many reactors in their country, and it's only a matter of time before they do. Okay, now the question is, how do we make money here? Okay, well, the ETF that they have is thinly traded. What I don't like about most ETFs is that they don't have dividends. I do not like to invest in securities that have no dividends. It's like you buy a piece of land with no house on it. Where are you going to get your income? That's the problem I have with growth stocks versus value stocks. So the question is, this is a momentum industry. It's uranium, right? Where are you going to find a company that pays dividends, that's solvent, that has a good balance sheet, that actually is in the black? I mean, despite the fact that we had such a tremendous drop in the price of uranium. Well, there's one company that stands out, and that's Cameco Corporation. Cameco Corporation is the largest uranium miner. That's what they do. Uranium. That's it. Okay? I looked at the company's financials. They're good. They're actually making money despite the fact that uranium prices have dropped so much. Their earnings per share growth has been up. Their PE ratio is just a little bit higher than the S&P industry standard. Now, what I like to look at more than fundamentals is the technicals. And like I mentioned in silver, Cameco Corporation is making a nice bottom. It went down substantially after it went up very strong earlier in the year. A lot of people were talking about it back then, but they were wrong because it came down very hard. But now it's making a nice base. So to explain this formation, let's take a look at the chart. Okay, so here's a chart of Cameco Corporation. And what you're looking at right here is a technical indicator called a cup and handle formation. Right over here would be the cup, and here is the handle. Now, the whole point of the cup and handle formation is to illustrate that you have a downtrending market. Okay? As you can see here, the trend is clearly down. And then you start to see it bottoming out. You see it forming a base. And the support is pretty strong. And then you see a rally right over here. And then a pullback. Now this pullback is the handle. Now in order to verify that this rally is a sustainable rally, the price would have to break above the top part of the handle, which is right here, where the green arrow is pointing to, and that would be 2167. So a break above 2167 would be a buy signal. Now, not all cup and handles look alike. In some formations, the handle is longer, the cup may be shorter. So what I recommend you do is look at some of them, research some cup and handle formations, and look at the different ones, and just study them and see what they've done. This has been an accurate indicator. It has worked in the past. Whether it's narrow, or it's longer, or the handle is longer or shorter, the whole point of it is it breaks above
the top of the handle, it means you have a change in trend. You want to be in a market that is trending towards the direction that you're in. So study a few cup and handle formations, get acquainted with them, and this way you'll have a good idea of how they work. Now, if the price doesn't break above the top of the handle, then you're just on the sidelines, and that's where you want to be, because the rally was not confirmed after the pullback. If the pullback continues going down and it goes sideways, then the rally was not confirmed, and you don't want to be a buyer. Maybe there's more room for it to go down, or if it goes sideways, it may form another cup and handle formation. And then, of course, there are other indicators out there. There are other technical indicators to use. You might want to study some of them and do research. See if they've worked in the past, and make a decision, based on which one you want to use. So the bottom line is that don't put all your eggs in one basket. This is something to consider. It's uranium. It's not a diversified company. They deal with uranium. So it's something that you might want to consider as an investment based on your risk capital and based on research that you've done. So just make a decision based on that. Make a decision whether or not you want to invest in it.
And what I see here is not only a long-term opportunity, but possibly a short-term opportunity. And keep in mind, if the stock goes down a little bit more, you're getting paid to hold it. It pays a nice dividend, 1.90 yield. And what's interesting about Cameco also is that despite the fact that the price of uranium has gone down, it looks like it's a turning point right here. The valuation is good. You look at the PE ratio, it's just a little bit higher than the S&P 500 standard. So all around, it looks like it can be a good long-term investment and short-term investment as well. So I would like to hear from you. What do you think about nuclear energy? What do you think about the morals of it? What do you think about the investment aspect of it? Please leave your comments. Please subscribe. Please like up this video. And thank you for tuning in.